Hey, my name is Zach. I'm going to start a little tutorial series on blueprints for game artists. There's a lot to blueprints that seems daunting at first glance, but it's really easy and straightforward to actually get some complex behavior and some interactive elements going. So I have set up a blueprint that automatically places cables between two different power lines or two different actors using the cable component and sockets. It's really straightforward to set up. I am using the modular homes. I'm using the modular home set from the marketplace. It was one of the free for the month deals that Unreal Engine has every month that rotates. Might be on there again, but if you have it, you can follow along directly, or you can just create your own power poles pretty quickly with just some cylinders and boxes and follow along. So the first thing you really want to do is make sure that you have sockets set up on your static meshes. So I open up the static mesh editor, go to socket manager. Don't see it, you can go to socket manager here. And really all you have to do is click the plus icon to start adding some sockets. So plus, got socket, drag it up. And we want the sockets to be placed where you want the cables to connect to. So we're setting them up at the top of the pole. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You can always adjust it later. The blueprint will have it update. But place one, hold down Alt, dragging the duplicate, it's placing another, Alt, dragging, placing another, Alt, dragging, placing another. We're not using the socket names for anything, so it's just going to go in order from first to last. So once you do have sockets set up, what we want to do is make a new blueprint. We're going to do actor. We're going to go ahead and name it BP. I'm going to call it 5-minute telepole, since I already have one called telephone pole, but you can call it whatever you want. Open it up. First thing we want to do is have an actor to base it off of, so we're going to just drag in that telephone pole. For this to work, we do need it to be the root, so we're going to drag it over to the root and put it in there. From there, we're going to go to the construction script. You can click there if you don't see it in the tabs. And we are going to drag out the telephone pole. I'm going to go ahead and rename it to static mesh root actor. And we want to set the static mesh. And using this, we're able to change the mesh and make this into a variable. Drag it down here. I'm just going to call it static mesh because this is what you're going to see on the right in the detail panel. Yeah, auto saving. Okay. New mesh. We're going to rename to static mesh. And it's exposed, and we're going to compile, and we'll just place one in the level just so we can see what's going on as we iterate on it. So there's nothing there, you noticed. That's because there's no static mesh assigned. You can go ahead and drag one there, and now there's a static mesh that's being assigned. We should probably just put a default static mesh in there, so we're going to drag and put it in there. So now when we put a new one, there's something there. So since we need two of them to connect, we're going to just leave two of these placed in the scene. So back up, and we need to look at the sockets. So we're going to take our root actor, get sockets. Okay, so get all socket names. Let's go ahead and do that. And we're going to let's get the first socket. And we're going to get the location of that socket. Okay, it's using the same reactor. So from here, let's go ahead and just create the cable actor. Add cable component, that's the name of it. Okay, and then we want to set the world location. Probably would have been better to drag off here, set world location. The reason we're working with world location is because if you look at the get socket location, it is saying the socket is in world space, and it's initially asking for a relative transformation. So we want just to be working world space just because of how this get socket location's working. So if we do that, compile, we should have a cable actor that's being spawned. Let's go ahead and move it. So we have a cable, but start location is being put there. And for whatever reason, just because the defaults of the cable, it's putting it down there. You can see the end locations is at 100 of the base. So from there, we need to set the end location. So let's go back to the cable component. We want the cable component end location. So we need to get end location. No, sorry. We need to set end location. Okay. So how are we going to get the end location? So we need to have we need the blueprint to start targeting something, getting the sockets from there, and using that to get the end location. So we need to look at other blueprint. We need a way to target other blueprint actors of this type. So we are going to search for BP5 in telephone pole, and go ahead and compile. Go ahead and drag that in. Get. I'm going to rename this as target. Plug this in. It's going to add a root component because that's what it's going to be looking at for the sockets. And use the get again. And also use the same socket location. But we want to use the root component again. And we're going to set this in location. But since this is working in world space and this is working in local space, it is still not going to work, but let's expose that target. So now we can select a target, and we're selecting another blueprint, and it's going way over there because it's not in the same world space or local space. So what we can do is take the root, get transformations, which gets the location and the rotation and the location and the scale. Scale is not going to be super useful for us right now, but inverse location, taking this location, plugging it through there, setting the world location, and that is making them connect. That one is going off into nowhere, and the reason why is because we don't have a actor set as the target. So what we can do is check to see if target's valid. There, valid. Is valid. So this is a little branch. We want to see if the target is actually set or if it's empty. So we're getting the target. Check to see if it's valid. If it is valid, add a cable component. If it's not, don't add a cable component. So now that is gone. So as soon as there's no target, it doesn't do anything. But if there is a target, it's drawing that cable. So also, one thing to notice is the cable is super tight when it's further away, but loose when it's close. What we can do is figure out the length the cable should be. So we're going to get the difference between these two vectors, these two locations. We're going to get the length of that. We're going to multiply this by a scaling thing. Promote this to a variable. And expose it. And we can rename it to be cable length. And we can get our cable component again. Get the length. Set the length. And we're going to plug this into there. And we want to make sure the default cable length is set to 1. This is going to be a multiplier, so we should just call it multiplier. So there it is at the default value. If we set the 0.5, it's really stiff. We set to 2, it's super loose. So we'll just use that, set that to 1 for now. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to loop this. We want this to happen multiple times for all 4 sockets. So from the int is valid, we're going to add a for loop. Not a for loop, just a for loop. Okay. So we need to figure out how many times we need to loop through these sockets. So we're going to get the length of each one of these arrays from all the sockets. The array is just going to be a list of all the sockets on that static mesh. So there's 2 different lengths that could be. So a good way to figure out, make sure everything lines up and matches, is just to do a little minimum check. And this will pick the lowest integer, or the lowest number, lowest length. And since arrays start at 0, we want a -1, since 0 is going to count as an item. And we can just move everything over real quick. Just make sure it's legible so you know what's going on. So this is going to loop 4 times for the 4 sockets that we have. And then where these gets are, we're just going to plug in the index, which is the number of the loop, but it's also going to pick the right number, right socket number to look at. And we hit compile, and we got 4. And a few things you can do to make it settle a little bit faster. You can increase the number of iterations, set the gravity to 10, and enable stiffness. And this makes it settle down really quick. So if you're just trying to see what it's looking like and just moving things around and you don't want a whole bunch of physics acting up, it makes it quicker. So one thing I noticed, the cables seem a little thick, so we can type in width, set this to 5. Also the cable is a little bit grayer than what I would personally like, so I'm going to assign a material. And if you wanted a fancier material, you could also just create one for the cable. So now if we drag out another one of these, select the target, change the length, and we have a working actor. One thing that's to note is it will only select other ones of these blueprints, just the way it's set up currently. But you can do things like, say you want to have a cross cable going between these 2. You could swap in a new actor, get rid of the target, rotate this, bring that up there, select the target. Now we got a blueprint. Here's the target. Let's do this as the target. Let's get rid of that target. Let's connect that to the house. Now I got a little cable hanging from there to there. And we can make that a little bit slackier. So that way you can get some cross cables going. They look really cool from the ground. It looks more interesting. Just adding more variety so all the assets don't look the same or too repetitive. Looks a little bit more realistic too, because they are some of those cross cables they have. Say you wanted to add another one, we can do one right here. Alt dragging the duplicate, putting a new static mesh, getting rid of the old target, rotating it to line up with the other telephone pole, connecting to the target. This one's twisted, so we can just flip it around. And we can also connect it to the house again, so we can have a blueprint that goes to here. And yeah, that's just a quick way to set up these procedural power lines. There's a lot of things you could add. You could be using static meshes instead of the cable component, and you could be getting the start and end and scaling the mesh to fit between those 2 sockets. And that way you could have a more complex looking power line if you wanted to have like some joints or some of their details and more interesting silhouette to the cables. But this is a really great starting point. You can do a lot with the sockets on static meshes. Thanks guys. I'm going to try to make another one of these next week, And if there's any interest, I'll keep going. If you have any ideas, questions, or any other things that are interesting you that you'd like to see in a future video, just let me know. Just leave in the comments. Thanks.